This episode contains descriptions of a fatal hit-and-run, long-term police investigation, and emotional testimony from the victim's family. Listener discretion is advised. Thanksgiving weekend in rural Ontario. A warm night, families asleep, and somewhere on a quiet county road, a secret is born. He was only 18. Walking home from a party, the lights of Alma shrinking behind him. What happened next would haunt his family for years and turn a small town inside out. Police would search for a car that seemed to vanish. A community would cling to rumors, and a mother would mark every Thanksgiving with the same question: why didn't they stop? Tonight we travel down Wellington Road 17 to a night that began in celebration and ended in silence. I'm Mark, and this is Northern Dark, True Canadian Crime. It's Friday, October 10th, 2008, Thanksgiving weekend. The air over Alma, Ontario is warm for fall, still and heavy, the kind of night where sound travels for miles. Inside a small farmhouse on the edge of town, teenagers gather for a party. Music spills into the fields. Laughter, the echo of bottles clinking, someone shouting over the beat. Among them is 18-year-old Lucas Shortreed. Big smile, bigger presence. Friends called him Piglet, a gentle giant with a laugh that filled any room. He talks about seeing his girlfriend tomorrow, plays a round of beer pong, and starts a playful argument over music. "You guys don't know Kanye," he jokes, half serious, half smiling. As the night wears on, someone's parent comes home. The crowd thins. It's almost 11:30 p.m. when Lucas steps out into the warm dark. He walks along a quiet road, heading east. The lights of Alma fade behind him. He's done this before, walking, thinking, letting the night clear his head. Home in Fergus is 14 kilometers away. Out here, the road climbs gently. A long rise through open farmland, lined with corn that rustles in the wind. No sidewalks, no streetlights, only the narrow glow of passing cars. A few minutes after midnight, a single vehicle comes up that hill. A white Dodge Neon, mid-90s, police would later say. Its headlights crest the rise. There's a flash of light, a sound like crushed steel, then silence. A passing motorist finds Lucas moments later, lying by the gravel shoulder. He calls 911, voice shaking, trying to describe what he's seen. By the time paramedics arrive, there's nothing anyone can do. On the road, investigators find only fragments, broken glass, a sliver of white paint, and the faint outline of tire marks curving toward the shoulder. The car that hit him is gone. No witnesses, no answers. Before the flashing lights and the billboards, before police spoke of paint samples and VIN numbers, there was just Lucas. He grew up in Fergus, Ontario, the youngest of 4 kids in a small bungalow on McTavish Street. If you ask anyone, they'll tell you he was a giant of a teenager, 6'3", 230, but gentle to the core. His mother, Judie Moore, used to say you could track where he was in the house just by listening for his laugh. It rolled through rooms like music. At school he was loud, funny, always moving. Friends called him Piglet, a nickname that stuck not because it fit, but because it made him smile. His best friend, Tariq Todd, remembered. You could hear him from a different classroom down the hall, a big, funny dude with so much energy. He was the kind of friend who noticed when someone was left out and sat with them anyway. If a buddy needed help moving a couch, Lucas was already there before you asked. He didn't want attention. He wanted people to feel okay. Afternoons often belonged to his grandmother, Eileen Moore. They baked cookies, jarred peaches, and laughed about the labels he'd write by hand for Thanksgiving. Every family member got one, a simple jar that meant you were loved. At Dairy Queen, where he worked part-time, co-workers remember him singing along to the radio and making even slow nights bearable. Ashley McKenzie said, "He was just a big, genuine, comfortable guy." He also volunteered at a local long-term care home, starting a gardening club for residents who couldn't go outside. One nurse told reporters, he'd bring the dirt to them, pots, plants, whatever they needed. He made people smile. He was close to his siblings, curious about the world, and starting to find his own path. Maybe college, maybe a trade, maybe something creative. But mostly, he was just 18, living in a small town where Friday nights felt safe and the future was still a blank page. That Thanksgiving weekend was supposed to be like so many before. Friends home from school, parties, laughs, plans for tomorrow. When he left that house party in Alma, he told his girlfriend he'd see her the next day. He told his friend Tariq, "Good night, man. See you tomorrow." By morning, those same friends would be standing on the side of Wellington Road 17, staring at blood on the pavement, asking how a life so full could just vanish in an instant. Before long, everyone in Fergus and Alma would know his name, not as the boy who laughed too loud or baked peaches with his grandma, but as the teenager whose face appeared on a billboard asking, "Do you know who hit and killed Lucas Shortreed?" When the call came in, OPP Sergeant Mike Ashley was at home. He'd handled collisions before, but never one like this. A fatal hit and run, a pedestrian, and no driver in sight. Just after midnight on October 11th, 2008, Wellington County OPP arrived on Wellington Road 17, east of Alma. No streetlights, no houses nearby, only the sound of the wind and the soft strobe of police lights across open farmland. They found Lucas Shortreed lying near the gravel shoulder, his body thrown 9 meters by the force of the impact. The road curved uphill, a long rise that could hide headlights until the last second. Evidence markers lined the pavement, shards of glass, a piece of broken signal light, and specks of white paint scattered across the lane. There were no skid marks, no sign the driver had even tried to stop. A motorist passing by had seen the body and called 911. He hadn't seen the car, just the aftermath. The kind of silence that lingers. The next morning, the investigation began. Officers believed the vehicle would have heavy front-end damage, shattered glass, a broken mirror, a buckled hood. But in a small rural county where people knew each other by name, nobody reported a thing. At the Center of Forensic Sciences in Toronto, paint analyst Jerry Lynn Vardy examined a fleck of white paint found at the scene. Another identical fragment had been recovered from Lucas's left hand. Under a microscope, she saw 6 distinct layers of paint. Not house paint, not repair paint, but the original factory coating from the manufacturer. Using an RCMP automotive paint database of over 15,000 samples, she narrowed the possibilities down to a mid-1990s white Dodge Neon built in Belvidere, Illinois, between 1995 and 1997. That was the break investigators needed. The first real clue. Police went public with the information. They asked for anyone with knowledge of a damaged white Neon to come forward. Thousands of leads followed, and one by one they were checked. 8,000 white Dodge Neons were registered in Ontario at the time. Officers visited barns, garages, rural driveways, anywhere a car might be hidden. Detective Constable Dave Telfer, who later joined the investigation, recalled, "We searched every corner of this county. Every white Neon we could find, we looked at. But that one car, the one we needed, just wasn't there." Still, the case stayed open. Every Thanksgiving, police reissued appeals. Billboards went up near the crash site. The same question hung in the air year after year. Who was driving, and why didn't they stop? Theories spread quickly. Maybe the driver was drunk, heading home from Oktoberfest in Kitchener-Waterloo. Maybe they panicked. Or maybe they weren't alone, and someone else helped them hide it. CHCH News quoted OPP Detachment Commander Scott Lawson, who said, "This is the kind of case you work and you work and you work. You don't close the book on it. A family and a community deserve answers." But as time passed, the trail went cold. No wrecks matched the evidence, no one came forward. And still, every fall, officers would drive Wellington Road 17, headlights sweeping that same rise, wondering who'd been behind the wheel that night. For 14 years, the pieces sat in boxes, fragments of paint and glass, photographs of a dark country road. But the truth wasn't gone. It was waiting, only a few kilometers away, hidden behind a wall. 14 years after Lucas Shortreed was killed, Detective Constable Dave Telfer still hadn't given up. His office wall was lined with binders, vehicle sweeps, interview transcripts, forensic reports. The case had outlasted half the officers who'd first worked it. But in June 2022, a new tip landed on his desk. The call was quiet, anonymous, the kind of voice that sounds unsure but truthful. I think I know where the car is. It's on Side Road 21, behind a wall, in a trailer. Telfer didn't hesitate. He drove the long rural road himself, past rows of corn and weathered barns, until he reached the address, the Halliburton property, just outside Mapleton Township. The family had lived there for years. He remembered them. They'd owned a white Dodge Neon, the same make and model as the car that hit Lucas, but it had been checked, cleared, and even used in a Crime Stoppers reenactment. Now, staring at a large white semi-trailer behind their brick home, he felt something he hadn't in years. Possibility. He later said, it looked like it had been sitting there forever. If there was a car inside, nobody had moved it in a long time. Telfer called in the OPP's Criminal Investigations Branch, led by Detective Inspector Jennifer Spurl. She'd seen cold cases turn on whispers before, but this tip had detail, confidence, and timing that felt different. Together, they reviewed the old files, hundreds of interviews, thousands of photos, but now they had a location. They applied for a covert search warrant, the kind of rare authorization that allows officers to enter a property unseen, gather evidence quietly, and leave no trace they'd been there. Spurl later said, "We needed to be sure. If there really was a car, we couldn't risk them moving or destroying it." The operation took place on the night of August 10th, 2022. Under cover of darkness, the OPP's technical support unit moved in. They breached the trailer quietly. No car, just boxes, tools, and empty space. Then one officer tapped the back wall, and it echoed hollow. A false partition, reinforced with a steel brace. Behind it, a car. The white Dodge Neon they'd searched for since 2008. Dented hood, collapsed roof, shattered windshield, still bearing the scars of the collision that killed Lucas Shortreed. Telfer later said, "When I saw that photo, that's when I felt relief. I knew we'd finally found it." In the following days, forensic teams combed the scene. Paint samples from the car matched those found on Lucas's body, and at the crash site, it was the same vehicle. But the Halliburtons had gone to shocking lengths to hide the truth. Investigators discovered that Dave and Anastasia Halliburton had bought an identical white Neon, swapped its VIN plates and license tags, and doused the original car in bleach to erase DNA. They'd even offered up the replacement Neon years earlier for police to use in the reenactment video. To the community, they'd appeared helpful. But behind the wall of their trailer sat the real car, the one that had taken Lucas's life. The OPP didn't rush to arrest them. They wanted proof of who had been driving that night, and they wanted the truth recorded in the driver's own words. They applied for another warrant, this time to bug the Halliburton's car, hoping one of them might talk. The device was installed discreetly. 2 days after the search, it happened. Dave Halliburton, alone with his daughter, began to talk. He said that on the night of October 10th, 2008, he'd had a few beers and was driving home with his 11-year-old son in the back seat. He saw Lucas at the last second. "Too late to stop," he told his daughter. "I knew right away I hit a person, but I told your brother we hit a deer." He admitted he'd planned to cut up the car but couldn't go through with it. Instead, he hit it and swapped VINs with the decoy Neon. He said, "Even if I was stone cold sober, I'd have done the exact same thing." That line would haunt investigators for months. On September 21st, 2022, OPP executed a search warrant at the Halliburton property. Dave and Anastasia were arrested and charged. Their home, only 5 kilometers from the crash site, became the final scene in a 14-year mystery. Dave, then 55, was charged with failing to remain at the scene of an accident involving death and obstruction of justice. Anastasia, 53, faced charges of accessory after the fact and obstructing justice. Both were released on bail pending trial. In the following weeks, forensic analyst Jerry Lynn Vardy once again examined the recovered Neon. She confirmed what everyone already suspected. The paint samples were an exact match. Even the hidden factory VINs deep in the frame lined up with the original car's manufacturing records. Her conclusion was unambiguous. This was the car that killed Lucas Shortreed. The discovery stunned the small community of Fergus and Alma. 14 years of rumors, guilt, and grief ended by a single phone call and a plywood wall. Judie, Lucas's mother, later said, "I didn't want to know who did it. I was afraid of what knowing would do to me. But I'm glad the truth came out." When the story broke, the OPP credited the anonymous tipster, calling their act purely altruistic. That person later received the $50,000 reward. though police said they had no idea a payout was even possible when they called. It wasn't about money. It was about conscience. For 14 years, a small Ontario town carried the weight of a secret it didn't know it was keeping. And for all those years, the answer sat just down the road, hidden in the dark, waiting for someone to finally open the door. The day finally came. September 26, 2023. Inside a small Guelph courtroom packed with reporters, family, and neighbors. After 14 years, Dave and Anastasia Halliburton would face judgment for what they'd done. The Crown Prosecutor, Paul Erskine, began reading from an agreed statement of facts, the official record of everything the OPP had uncovered. Among those details was a moment that sent a chill through the courtroom. Police had planted a hidden microphone inside the Halliburtons' vehicle, just 2 days after their arrest. On that recording, Dave Halliburton confessed to his daughter that he had been the driver. He told her he'd been drinking a few beers, but didn't think he was over the limit. He said Lucas appeared at the last second, that he knew right away he'd hit a person, not an animal. His 11-year-old son was in the back seat. When the boy asked what had happened, Halliburton lied. "We hit a deer." He drove home with a shattered windshield and a bleeding child, then began the cover-up that would last for 14 years. He doused the car with bleach, swapped VIN plates with another identical neon, and hid the wreck behind a false wall in a semi-trailer, just 5 kilometers from the crash site. Then, when police came knocking years later, he let them use the decoy car in a Crime Stoppers video. The judge later called that act an insult to the community's grief. When Justice Matthew Stanley addressed the court, he said the Halliburtons' actions were not fleeting, not impulsive, but calculated, by design, and intentional. He made clear that the issue was not reckless driving, but the cover-up, the deliberate deception that stole 14 years of peace from an entire town. Then came the victim impact statements. Pat Shortreed, Lucas's father, spoke first. He looked directly at the Halliburtons. "You prioritized your own lives over our right to grieve. My son was a child, barely a man, and you left him there to die. The selfishness, the cowardice, it's beyond belief." Judie's brothers, Jim and John Moore, followed. Jim said, "Accidents can be forgiven, but what you did afterward, that was heartless, planned, cold. My nephew had more humanity at 18 than I see in front of me today." And then Judie herself stood. Her voice trembled, but her words carried the weight of every sleepless night since 2008. "I believed I never wanted you to be found," she said. "I didn't know if my family could survive a trial. I almost didn't survive waiting for one. I was hospitalized last winter and had open-heart surgery in April. You lack the compassion to understand what your lies have done, but I have survived them. My son's light will still shine." Judge Stanley took a breath, then delivered his ruling. Dave Halliburton, 2.5 years in custody. Anastasia Halliburton, a 6-month conditional sentence, including house arrest and community service. He acknowledged that the sentences might anger some, but added, "These are within the range of what our justice system allows. The harm here was not the collision, it was the years of deception that followed." No one from the defense table spoke. Dave Halliburton declined to address the court. He was handcuffed, led away, and transferred to Beaver Creek Institution near Muskoka. Anastasia walked out free. Outside the courthouse, the reaction was instant. Outrage online. Headlines across Ontario calling the punishment a slap in the face. But Judie urged calm. She posted on Facebook, "We can't change the past. We have to move on. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself from hate." She also named Carl LeBlanc, the man wrongly suspected for years, and apologized publicly. LeBlanc's sister, Sherelle, was in court that day. After the sentencing, Judie walked up to her and said, "I always knew it wasn't Carl." They hugged, 2 families finally freed from the same wound. The anonymous tipster who cracked the case later received the $50,000 reward. OPP confirmed the person hadn't asked for it, or even known it existed. Detective Spurl said, "It was a purely altruistic act, someone who heard something and did the right thing." Telfer, after nearly a decade on the file, finally closed it. He said, "Some cases end with a big arrest. This one ended with relief and quiet." The people of Alma and Fergus still drive that same road, Wellington Road 17, every Thanksgiving weekend. The fields look the same, the air still smells like autumn, but everyone who lived through those years remembers what was hidden behind that wall and what it cost to find it. After 14 years, justice had finally spoken, quietly, briefly, and for some, incompletely. But in Fergus and Alma, the search for peace was only beginning. Each October, when the air turns crisp and the leaves start to fall, Judie Moore keeps a ritual. On the Friday of Thanksgiving weekend, the last day her son was alive, she takes the day off work, buys a coffee in town, and walks along the Grand River. She stops in the same spot every year, looks at the water, and picks a single flower to bring to his grave. She calls it her visit with Lucas. At Bellside Cemetery, his stone sits on a quiet slope locals now call Tragedy Row. Next to him lie other children, a baby boy, a girl just 10 weeks old, another young man taken too soon. She never wanted memorials by the road, no cross, no flowers where he was hit. "That's not where he lived," she once said. "That's where he died." A few Thanksgivings ago, she arrived to find a jar of peaches on his headstone, homemade, with a simple label. No note, just a quiet gesture from someone who remembered. It brought her back to the days Lucas spent with his grandmother Eileen, jarring fruit for family each autumn. She smiled through tears and said, "It's heartwarming that someone took the time." Across town, the billboard that once asked, "Do you know who killed Lucas Shortreed?" has long been taken down. But the question changed people. It taught a small Ontario community how grief can linger, and how truth, no matter how late it arrives, still matters. Former OPP detective Dave Telfer said he kept a copy of that poster in his office drawer. "Every year I'd open it and think, 'We're not done yet,'" he said. "When we finally found that car, I just sat there in silence." Superintendent Jennifer Spurl called the anonymous tip a reminder that the truth always has a way of finding light. Today, when people in Fergus talk about Lucas Shortreed, they don't start with how he died. They remember how he lived, the boy who baked with his grandma, who laughed too loud in class, who walked friends home just to make sure they were safe. In the end, maybe that's what endures most. Not the secret hidden behind a wall, but the love that still echoes beyond it. Hello everyone, I'm back with Leah, and thank you for listening to our podcast and our episode about the tragic death of Lucas Shortreed on that fall night.
It should have been another normal Thanksgiving holiday, until it wasn't.
You know, Leah, I think what stays with me most about this one isn't the crime itself. It's the silence that surrounded it, and the deception by the Halliburtons for 14 years. They left 14 years of questions, guilt, and rumors. And all that time, the truth was sitting just a few kilometers away from the accident on their property.
Yeah. And even after hearing everything that came out in court, the bleach, the false wall, the confession, what really broke me was Judie's reaction. She didn't lash out. She didn't demand vengeance. She wrote a letter about kindness.
Right, it was called Lucas a Gentle Giant. It was published in the Wellington Advertiser. And it's one of the most powerful things I've read from a victim's family. She said, "We were shocked, sickened, and in tears listening to the extent of their deceit. But we have morals. We need to move on and not waste any more of our precious time and energy." That takes a kind of strength I don't think most people could find.
And the way she honored Lucas, it wasn't through anger. She asked people to do small human things. Hug someone, visit a senior, plant a tree, cuddle a cat. Judie went on to write, "Enjoy your freedom. Take just a little more pleasure in choosing what you want to eat, sleeping in your own bed, having a window to look out, knowing you can go anywhere at any time you want. We have the wisdom. Let's make a difference."
Yeah, those words hit hard. They're reminders that behind every headline, there's a life. A real person who laughed, helped others, and had a family who still carries that memory forward.
And she mentioned the MAD organization and to donate to Mothers Against Drunk Driving because alcohol does kill. It was just one line, but it says so much. Even though police never proved alcohol was a factor, Judie still wanted people to understand how fast a choice behind the wheel can destroy lives.
Exactly. She turned that tragedy into a call for responsibility, a message to everyone heading out on a holiday weekend, a reminder to think twice before driving impaired. That's something Mad has been saying for decades, and here was a mother echoing it through her own loss.
It's powerful when those messages come from real families. It's not about a campaign or a slogan. It's about the reality that someone never came home.
And that's what makes her letter so extraordinary. It isn't about forgiveness alone. It's about turning grief into purpose. She found a way to pull the story back from darkness and make it human again.
I think that's what this show tries to do too. Find the humanity in the aftermath. Not just the crime, but how people keep living after it.
Yeah. For Judie, that meant planting trees, remembering Lucas with a jar of peaches, and asking people to make small changes, the kind that ripple out quietly but last. If she's listening, I hope she knows how much her strength meant to everyone who followed this story. There's one more thing worth mentioning. Lucas's family filed a civil lawsuit, a $1 million claim against David and Anastasia Halliburton.
That's right. It was filed in Toronto before the couple was convicted, on behalf of Lucas's mother, sister, brother, and his estate.
It's about accountability, not just in the courts, but for the years of silence that followed.
If you believe stories like Lucas's deserve to be remembered, help us share them. Like, follow and subscribe wherever you listen. It really helps us reach more people who care about true Canadian crime.
Special thanks to Mad Canada for their ongoing work supporting victims' families and raising awareness to prevent impaired driving, and to everyone who continues to honor Lucas Shortreed's memory. Thank you for keeping his light alive.
And don't forget to join us on social media. You can follow us on X and YouTube for updates at Northern Dark. TCC, we publish videos throughout the week on true crime.
We'll be back next Monday with another story from across Canada. Until then, take care of each other.